When my wife of 5 years sat me down and asked permission to sleep with her CrossFit trainer, I didn't just get mad, I got even. She claimed she wanted an honest, open marriage while planning a luxury weekend with her lover. Big mistake. Instead of saying no, I orchestrated the perfect plan to turn their romantic getaway into a weekend of pure hell. By the time I was done, they'd learned that karma has a wicked sense of humor, and revenge is a dish best served with style. You know what's worse than discovering your wife is cheating? Having her ask permission first. Yeah, you read that right. Let me take you through what might be the most surreal Wednesday evening of my life. I'm Alex, 34, and until last week, I thought I had a pretty good handle on life. I run a successful auto repair shop in Phoenix, own a house in a decent neighborhood, and was married to Rachel for 5 years. Notice the past tense there? Let me explain why. I was finishing up paperwork in my home office when Rachel came in, holding 2 glasses of wine. Now, my wife bringing me wine on a weekday usually means either really good news or really bad news. Turns out it was neither. It was absolutely insane news. We need to talk, she said, setting down the glasses. I nodded, thinking maybe she finally wanted to discuss the vintage Mustang project I'd been dreaming about. Instead, she dropped a bomb that would make a nuclear explosion look like a firecracker. Alex, I want to see other people, but I want to stay married to you. I almost choked on my wine. Come again. I've met someone in my CrossFit gym. His name is Marcus, and we've been talking for a while. I haven't done anything physical with him yet, but I want to be honest with you about it. The crazy part? She said all this with the same tone she uses when asking if we should try that new Thai place downtown. Like she was suggesting we change cable providers, not completely demolish our marriage vows. Let me get this straight, I said, putting down my glass before I dropped it. You want my permission to sleep with your gym buddy while staying married to me? It's not just about sex, Rachel explained, as if that made it better. Marcus and I have a real connection, but I love you and our life together. I don't want to lose that. I thought if we were honest about it, we could make it work. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The whole situation was so absurd it felt like I was living in some twisted reality show. And how exactly did you picture this working? Well, she said, suddenly very interested in her wine glass. Marcus and I were thinking of going away this weekend. To Sedona. Just to see how things feel. That's when it hit me. She'd already planned this. The conversation wasn't a spontaneous confession. It was a courtesy notification. Like a memo about changing the office coffee supplier. Have you lost your mind? I asked, standing up. You actually think I'd be okay with my wife going on romantic getaways with some CrossFit Romeo? I hoped you'd understand, she said, looking hurt, as if I was the unreasonable one in this scenario. Love isn't a finite resource, Alex. I can love you both. I walked out of the office and headed straight for our guest room. Behind me, Rachel called out, "Where are you going?" "To sleep in a bed that isn't tainted by complete insanity," I replied, grabbing my pillow from our bedroom. As I closed the guest room door, I heard her say something about taking time to think about it. Oh, I was going to think about it all right, but not in the way she hoped. As I lay there staring at the ceiling, my mind was already racing through what I needed to do. First thing tomorrow, I'd be making some calls and picking up some equipment. If Rachel wanted to play this game, she was about to learn that honesty works both ways. Sleep didn't come easily that night. By 6 a.m., I was already in my shop, not working on cars but working on a plan. One thing about being a mechanic, you learn that every problem has a solution if you have the right tools. And I was about to get myself a whole new toolbox. First stop, my buddy Steve's electronics store. Steve's one of those tech geeks who can make a smartphone dance the Macarena if he wants to. I laid out my situation, and his eyes lit up like a Christmas tree. Voice-activated recorders, he said, pulling out some equipment. I've got these new models. They can record for days on a single charge. And check this out. He showed me a GPS tracker smaller than a pack of gum. Military grade. Accurate within 3 feet. I bought 3 recorders, 2 GPS trackers, and a phone monitoring system that would make the CIA jealous. Cost me nearly $2,000, but considering Rachel makes twice that in a week at her fancy CrossFit studio, I considered it an investment in truth. Back at home, Rachel was already at work. Perfect timing. First, I placed one recorder near our landline. Yeah, we still had one because Rachel's grandmother refused to use anything else. Another went into her car, carefully hidden under the passenger seat. The third found its home in our bedroom, because if there's one thing I've learned from years of marriage, it's that people do their most honest talking right before bed. The GPS trackers were next. One went in her gym bag. She never went anywhere without it. The second I kept as backup. The phone monitoring system was trickier, but being the one who pays the phone bills has its advantages. Within an hour, I had access to every text, call, and email she'd send or receive. But the real goldmine was her laptop. Rachel always used the same password for everything. Our wedding date. Romantic, right? Not so much now. I found a secret email account within minutes. There were dozens of emails between her and Marcus, dating back 3 months. They'd been planning this honest conversation with me for weeks. "We need to handle this delicately," Marcus had written. "Alex seems like a reasonable guy. If we approach this right, he might understand." Reasonable guy? I'll show them reasonable. The emails confirmed their Sedona plans. The enchantment resort, no less. A place that costs more per night than most people make in a week. They had a reservation for this coming Friday and Saturday. Well, isn't that convenient? I made a few more calls. My lawyer, Mike, agreed to meet me tomorrow. Then I called my bank and started the process of separating our accounts. By noon, I had canceled our joint credit cards and opened new accounts in just my name. The final touch? I booked my own room at the Enchantment Resort. Different floor, but close enough to pick up any signals from my equipment. Rachel wanted honesty. She was about to get more honesty than she bargained for. When Rachel came home that evening, I barely looked up from my laptop. She tried to start a conversation about processing our discussion from last night, but I just walked past her to the guest room. Let her think I was struggling with the decision. In reality, I was watching her emails pop up in real time as she messaged Marcus about how difficult I was being. Difficult? Lady, you haven't seen difficult yet. By Wednesday evening, my surveillance system was working better than a NASCAR pit crew. Every conversation, every message, every move was being recorded. But even with all the evidence I'd gathered, I decided to give Rachel one last chance. Not because I still had hope, but because I wanted her to understand exactly what she was throwing away. I found her in the kitchen, meal prepping her protein-heavy dinners for the week. The irony of her preparing meals for the days she planned to spend with Marcus wasn't lost on me. "Got a minute?" I asked, leaning against the counter. "We need to talk about your proposal." Rachel's face lit up like she'd just won a CrossFit competition. "Of course. I'm so glad you're willing to discuss this. Before you get too excited," I said, "I want to be crystal clear about something. Is this weekend in Sedona still your plan?" She froze for a moment, then tried to cover it with a smile. "How did you know about Sedona?" "That's not important right now. What's important is your answer." "Yes," she said, straightening her spine like she was preparing for a heavy lift. "Marcus and I were hoping to go. To explore our connection in a neutral space." I had a laugh at that. Neutral space? The Enchantment Resort is hardly neutral when he's dropping $2,000 a night for it. Her eyes widened. "You've been checking up on me?" "Let's focus on the question at hand," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I'm giving you one last chance to reconsider this. If you go through with this weekend, there will be consequences. Serious ones. Are you threatening me?" The protein shake in her hand trembled slightly. "Not at all. I'm being honest. Isn't that what you wanted? Complete honesty?" I moved closer, looking her directly in the eyes. "So here's my honest truth. If you go to Sedona with Marcus, our marriage is over. No discussion, no second chances, no compromise." "You're being unreasonable," she protested. "This doesn't have to change anything between us. Marcus understands dash. Marcus understands nothing." I cut her off. "And apparently, neither do you. So let me make this perfectly clear. This is your last chance to save our marriage. Cancel the trip, and whatever this is with Marcus, and maybe we can work through this." Rachel set down her protein shake and crossed her arms. "I can't do that. This is something I need to explore. If you really loved me, you'd understand that. If I really loved you..." I shook my head. "I've spent 5 years showing you how much I love you. But apparently, that's worth less than a weekend with CrossFit Ken." "His name is Marcus," she snapped. "His name won't matter much after this weekend," I said, turning to leave. "Remember, this is your last chance. Choose wisely." She called after me. Why can't you just be open-minded about this? I stopped at the doorway, but didn't turn around. Why can't you just be faithful? I spent the rest of the evening in the guest room, listening through my headphones as she called Marcus to complain about how unreasonable I was being. They spent 20 minutes planning their weekend, completely unaware that every word was being recorded. Fine, if that's how she wanted to play it. I had a few plans of my own. I pulled out my phone and made a call to Mike, my lawyer. Get everything ready, I told him. We're going to need those papers by Friday. Tomorrow, I'd finish my preparations. Rachel thought she was being clever, thought she had it all figured out. But she was about to learn that sometimes the price of honesty is higher than expected. Thursday morning hit like a ton of bricks, but I was up with the sun. Time to put phase 2 of my plan into action. My buddy Steve had hooked me up with something special, a set of wireless cameras small enough to hide in a hotel room. Was I crossing a line? Maybe. But Rachel had blown those lines to kingdom come when she decided to play house with Marcus. First stop was my lawyer's office. Mike took one look at my face and knew it was game time. I laid out everything I'd gathered so far, the emails, the recordings, the whole 9 yards. Holy smokes, Mike whistled, scrolling through the evidence. She really stepped in it this time, didn't she? You don't know the half of it, I replied, pulling out the hotel confirmation. They're shacking up at the Enchantment Resort this weekend. 5-star luxury on his dime, while she's still using our joint account for her daily smoothies. We spent the next hour preparing the divorce papers. Mike added some extra spice, a clause about moral turpitude that would make Rachel's eyes pop out of her head. By noon, everything was signed and ready to go. Back at my shop, I had some preparing to do. I told my guys I needed Friday off for personal business. Joey, my head mechanic, gave me a knowing look. Word travels fast in a small business, and Rachel's new gym buddy hadn't exactly been keeping a low profile. My background check on Marcus came through. Turns out Mr. Perfect Body had some interesting skeletons in his closet. 3 failed businesses, 2 bankruptcies, and a heap of debt. No wonder he was after Rachel, or more specifically, after the trust fund she'd inherited last year. The cherry on top? I found his wife's contact information. Jennifer Marcus, elementary school teacher, and, according to Facebook, dedicated CrossFit widow. I had a feeling she'd be very interested in her husband's weekend plans. Around 6 p.m., Rachel came home in full weekend prep mode. She was practically floating on air, humming while she packed her overnight bag. I watched from the doorway as she carefully folded her new lingerie, the stuff she'd bought last week with our joint credit card. The same card that was now about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. Going somewhere? I asked, making her jump. Oh, yes, I have that work retreat this weekend. Remember? Work retreat? Right. Because apparently, I'd fallen off the turnip truck yesterday. Must be some retreat, I said, nodding at the lingerie. Didn't realize CrossFit had dress codes now. She flushed red but kept packing. It's not what you think. No. Because I think it's exactly what it looks like. You're packing for a weekend of playing house with Marcus while throwing away a 5-year marriage. I walked away before she could respond. Let her stew in that for a while. Tomorrow, she'd head off to Sedona thinking she had it all figured out. But this game was far from over. In fact, it was just getting started. Friday morning came around, and I was ready to roll. I'd barely slept, but adrenaline was keeping me sharp as a tack. My surveillance gear was packed, hotel room confirmed, and I had eyes on Rachel's location through the GPS tracker. She was at the gym, probably getting in one last workout with Marcus before their big adventure. I parked my truck down the street from our house, waiting. According to their emails, Marcus was picking her up at 1 p.m. for their 2-hour drive to Sedona. Sure enough, right on schedule, his shiny BMW pulled into our driveway. Show-off probably thought he was hot stuff in that lease ride. Rachel came out looking like she was headed for a fashion show, not a work retreat. She'd done something different with her hair, and that dress definitely wasn't from her usual workout wardrobe. My blood boiled watching Marcus hop out to help with her bags, acting like some kind of gentleman. Dude was about as genuine as a $3 bill. What happened next made me see red. Right there in our driveway, Rachel wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him. Not a quick peck, mind you, but the kind of kiss that would make a romance novel blush. And then, the cherry on top of this crud sundae, she looked right at my truck and smirked. Yeah, she knew I was watching. That was her way of twisting the knife. They got in his car, and I watched them drive off like they were headed to their happily ever after. Little did they know they were actually driving straight into a storm of their own making. I waited until they turned the corner before heading inside to set the rest of my plan in motion. First order of business: changing every lock in the house. I'd hired a locksmith who didn't ask questions and worked fast. Within an hour, Rachel's keys were about as useful as a chocolate teapot. I also changed the garage door code and the security system password. Let's see how smug she feels when she can't get into her own house on Sunday. Next up was a call to Jennifer, Marcus's wife. She answered on the third ring, and boy, was that an interesting conversation. "Mrs. Marcus, you don't know me, but I think we need to talk about our spouse's weekend plans." "They're what?" Her voice could have frozen Phoenix in July. "Oh, you didn't know about the romantic getaway they planned?" Funny, my wife assured me his wife was totally cool with it. Dead silence on the other end, then, "Tell me everything." We talked for half an hour. Turns out Jennifer had suspected something was up, but couldn't put her finger on it. By the time we finished, she was ready to rain holy hell down on Marcus's perfectly sculpted head. Perfect timing, too. She'd be getting those divorce papers the same time Rachel got hers. After hanging up, I packed my own bags and headed out. The Enchantment Resort was waiting, and I had some special additions to make to their love nest before they arrived. Steve's cameras needed perfect placement if we were going to catch every moment of their little weekend getaway. As I drove toward Sedona, I couldn't help but laugh at the irony. Rachel wanted honesty? Well, she was about to get more honesty than she bargained for. By Monday, everyone would know exactly what kind of retreat she'd been on. Time to show these lovebirds that karma isn't just a word. It's a boomerang that hits twice as hard on the way back. Setting up the cameras in their room was a piece of cake. Being a mechanic has its perks. Nobody looks twice at a guy in a maintenance uniform. The Enchantment Resort staff probably thought I was fixing the AC. Within 20 minutes, I had everything in place. 2 cameras with perfect views and audio that could pick up a whisper. Back in my room, I pulled up the feeds on my laptop. Crystal clear. Now it was time for Phase 2 of Operation Kill the Mood. Rachel and Marcus had just checked in, looking like cats that got the cream. Through my surveillance, I watched them pop champagne and start getting cozy. Time to rain on their parade. First up, a specially arranged couples massage, courtesy of an anonymous guest. The look on Marcus's face when the masseuses showed up at their door? Priceless. Rachel tried to turn them away, but the persistent massage therapist insisted the service was prepaid and non-refundable. By the time they finally got rid of them, the mood was about as romantic as a root canal. But I was just warming up. Next came the flower delivery, a massive arrangement of Rachel's least favorite flowers, lilies, with a card reading, "Happy Anniversary, Darling. Love, your husband." Marcus looked like he'd swallowed a lemon whole. The piece de resistance? I'd arranged for a singing telegram, a barbershop quartet in full costume, to show up just as they were trying to get romantic again. The quartet insisted on performing their entire repertoire of love songs, including a special dedication from a loving husband to his faithful wife. Through my cameras, I watched Rachel pace the room like a caged tiger after that one. "This has to be Alex's doing," she fumed. "But how did he know we'd be here?" Marcus tried to salvage the evening by ordering room service. Bad move, Romeo. See, I'd made friends with the hotel staff, and let's just say their order got a few special modifications. Nothing dangerous or tampered with. Just every single item was monumentally wrong. Steak instead of fish, spicy instead of mild, you name it. "This is ridiculous," Rachel snapped after sending back their third wrong order. "Everything's going wrong. You ain't seen nothing yet, sweetheart." The final touch? A loud knocking on their door at midnight. When Marcus opened it, there stood a private investigator, actually my buddy Joey in a suit, flashing a fake badge and asking very loud questions about reports of suspicious activity. By the time Joey finished his investigation, the romantic mood was deader than disco. Through my cameras, I watched Rachel and Marcus argue about whether they should just call it quits and go home. But their pride wouldn't let them. They were determined to stick it out. Fine by me. I still had plenty of tricks on my sleeve for tomorrow. After all, what's a romantic getaway without a few surprises? Saturday morning kicked off with a bang. Literally. The construction crew I'd tipped off started their emergency maintenance right above Rachel and Marcus's room at 6 a.m. sharp. Nothing like the sound of jackhammers to spice up a romantic morning. Through my cameras, I watched them try to soldier through breakfast in their room. That's when phase 2 kicked in. Remember those sexy new underthings Rachel packed? Well, let's just say that a little carefully applied pepper spray can turn lingerie into a real mood killer. Within minutes of putting them on, she was scratching like she'd fallen into poison ivy. I must be allergic to something, she told Marcus, rushing to the shower. The look on his face was pure gold. Confusion mixed with frustration, topped with a healthy dose of what the hell is going on. But I was just getting warmed up. Time for the main event. Sir, the hotel manager called Marcus. There seems to be an issue with your credit card. Watching Marcus squirm was better than any pay-per-view fight. Turns out someone, okay me, had tipped off his credit card company about suspicious charges at a resort. They'd frozen his card faster than a popsicle in Alaska. Rachel offered to pay, but, wouldn't you know it, her cards were declined too. The manager was being a real stickler about it too, threatening to call security if they didn't sort it out pronto. This is ridiculous, Marcus snapped, his Mr. Cool Guy act cracking like cheap paint. I have plenty of money. Sure you do, buddy. Those bankruptcy records, I've found, say otherwise. They spent 2 hours on the phone with their banks, missing their spa appointment and the hiking tour they'd planned. By the time they got the cards sorted, temporarily, both were ready to blow a gasket. Let's just go to dinner, Rachel suggested. Something normal. Normal? Oh, honey, that ship has sailed. I'd arranged for a special surprise at the restaurant. Every few minutes, a new delivery arrived at their table, flowers, chocolates, singing telegrams, you name it. Each one with increasingly suspicious cards. To my darling wife, missing you already, can't wait for you to come home. The other diners were eating it up, cooing over what they thought was the world's most romantic husband. Rachel looked ready to crawl under the table, while Marcus was turning interesting shades of red. The final straw? A skyrider I'd hired drew a massive heart over the resort with Rachel plus Alex forever inside it. They couldn't even escape it by going inside. Someone, me again, had tipped off every guest and staff member about the romantic gesture. By evening, they were barely speaking to each other. Rachel's allergy had gotten worse. Marcus's credit cards were still acting up, and the whole resort thought they were witnessing either an elaborate romantic gesture or a very public marriage drama. Through my cameras, I watched them argue in their room. This can't all be coincidence, Rachel fumed. Alex must have found out somehow. Impossible, Marcus insisted, but his voice had all the confidence of a turkey on Thanksgiving. If they only knew, tomorrow's plans would make today look like a walk in the park. Sometimes karma needs a little help, and I was more than happy to be her assistant. Sunday morning, and the fun was just getting started. While Rachel and Marcus were trying to salvage what was left of their romantic weekend, I was putting the final touches on Monday's grand finale. My lawyer, Mike, had everything ready to go. The papers will be served at exactly 2 p.m., Mike confirmed over the phone, right in the middle of her advanced CrossFit class. Jennifer's lawyer will hit Marcus at his gym at the same time. Talk about perfect timing, I chuckled. Nothing like divorce papers to spice up a workout. I spent the morning reviewing the footage from my cameras. Rachel and Marcus looked about as happy as cats in a rainstorm. The romance was dead as a doornail, but their pride wouldn't let them throw in the towel early. The evidence we'd gathered was solid gold. Every conversation, every moment caught on camera. It was enough to make even a divorced judge's jaw drop. Jennifer's lawyer was practically doing cartwheels when I shared the footage with him. This is slam dunk material, he said. Marcus won't know what hit him. Around noon, I watched them pack up through my feed. Rachel looked like she'd been through the ringer. That allergy of hers was still going strong, and Marcus's credit cards were still giving him grief. They'd ended up having to borrow cash from the front desk just to tip the staff. Maybe we should have listened to Alex, Rachel muttered while packing. This weekend has been one disaster after another. You don't say, honey, and the hits just keep on coming. I'd arranged one final surprise for their trip home. Every radio station within 50 miles would be playing their favorite love songs, each one dedicated to Rachel from her loving husband. Cost me a pretty penny to set up, but seeing Marcus's face turn purple every time a new dedication came on, worth every cent. Back in my hotel room, I started packing up my own gear. The cameras had served their purpose, and I had enough evidence to sink the Titanic. Mike had already filed the paperwork for Monday, and Jennifer's lawyer was chomping at the bit to serve Marcus. "You sure you don't want to serve them at the hotel?" Mike asked during our final check-in. "Nah, let them stew in their own juice for one more night. Monday's gonna hit them like a ton of bricks." I took one last look at their room through the cameras before shutting everything down. They were both miserable, snippy with each other, and looked like they'd aged 10 years in 2 days. Mission accomplished. Tomorrow, while they were trying to get back to their normal routines, thinking the worst was behind them, they'd learn just how wrong they were. Rachel would get served in front of her fitness class, and Marcus would get his papers right in the middle of training a client. Sometimes karma needs a helping hand, and boy, had I given it one heck of a push. They rolled up to our house around 8 p.m. Sunday, looking like they'd been through World War III. Rachel's allergy had her scratching like crazy, and Marcus's perfectly styled hair was a mess. Karma had definitely earned its paycheck this weekend. I was sitting in the living room when Rachel came in, watching the game like I didn't have a care in the world. Marcus, the genius, actually tried to follow her inside. "One more step, and you'll need medical attention," I called out without taking my eyes off the TV. He froze like a deer in headlights. Rachel turned to him. "Maybe you should go." "Yeah, maybe you should," I echoed, finally looking at them. "Unless you want a preview of tomorrow's entertainment." Marcus backed away faster than a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. Rachel watched him peel out of our driveway before turning to me, arms crossed. "All right, out with it. That whole weekend was your doing, wasn't it?" "Who, me?" I smiled. "I was just sitting here, watching the game. Though I heard the Enchantment Resort is lovely this time of year." Her face went white as a sheet. "How did you dash?" "No. Please. You two weren't exactly criminal masterminds. But let's talk about your weekend. How was the champagne? The room service? Oh, wait. There was that nasty business with the credit cards, wasn't there?" "You had no right," she started, but I cut her off. "No right? That's rich coming from someone who wanted permission to play house with Captain CrossFit. Speaking of rights, you might want to sit down. We need to have a chat about tomorrow." "What about tomorrow?" "Well, you've got your advanced class at 2 p.m., right? I make sure to wear something nice. You're going to have company." She sank into the armchair. "What are you talking about? Divorce papers don't deliver themselves, honey." "Oh, and your boyfriend?" "He's getting a special delivery too. His wife sends her regards." "His wife?" But he said that she was fine with it. "Yeah, funny story about that. Jennifer and I had quite the chat. She's about as fine with it as I am. Though I gotta hand it to Marcus. Playing both sides? That takes some nerve." Rachel's face cycled through more emotions than a soap opera marathon. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Want to see the video footage from your romantic getaway? The emails? The texts? I've got enough evidence to bury both of you. You've been spying on us? Let's call it gathering facts. But hey, you wanted honesty, remember? Well, tomorrow everyone's going to get a nice big dose of it." She started crying then. Real tears, not the manipulative ones she'd used when asking for permission to cheat. "I made a mistake, Alex. We can work this out. A mistake is burning dinner. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. Planning a weekend getaway with your gym buddy while asking your husband's permission to cheat? That's a choice. And choices have consequences." "What do you want me to do?" she whispered. "Nothing. There's nothing to do. You made your choice when you walked out that door with him. Tomorrow, you'll get the paperwork. Your stuff will be packed and waiting at your sister's place. And this dash," I pulled out her flattened wedding ring, "is what's left of our marriage." She stared at the crushed metal. "You destroyed my ring?" "No, Rachel. You did that. I just made it official." I stood up, heading for my room. "Oh, and don't bother trying to get in tomorrow after your class. The locks have been changed, and your code doesn't work anymore. Might want to call your sister now, arrange a place to stay. Alex, please dash. We're done here. Enjoy the consequences of your honesty." I closed my door, leaving her crying in the living room. Tomorrow was going to be rough, but tonight? Tonight I could finally sleep knowing I'd done what needed to be done. Monday arrived right on schedule, and boy, was it a doozy. I planned to be at the gym by 1:45, wanting a front row seat to the show. Rachel was in full instructor mode, running her advanced CrossFit class like nothing was wrong. Marcus was across town, probably thinking he was home free. "Wrong again, buddy." At exactly 2 p.m., Mike's associate walked into the gym, cool as a cucumber. Rachel was mid-burpee demonstration when he called her name. The look on her face when she saw those papers? Priceless. Her perfect CrossFit instructor facade crumbled faster than a cookie in a hurricane. "What's this?" she asked, though we both knew she knew exactly what it was. "Divorce papers, Mrs. Thompson. You've been served." Her class went dead silent. You could have heard a protein shake drop. Then the whispers started, phones came out, and within minutes, the whole gym was buzzing like a hornet's nest. Across town, Marcus was getting his own special delivery. Jennifer's lawyer caught him, right in the middle of training his highest-paying client. The timing couldn't have been better if we'd planned it. Oh wait, we did. By noon, both their phones were blowing up. Turns out someone, me, had sent some choice video clips to the gym owner. Rachel's honest approach to marriage didn't exactly align with the gym's family-friendly values. She was out of a job faster than you can say, unauthorized personal training. Marcus? His wife didn't just file for divorce. She went nuclear. Turns out Jennifer had some serious family connections in the fitness industry. By the end of the day, his certification was under review, and his client list was thinner than a runway model. Rachel tried calling me about 50 times. I let it go to voicemail. The messages started angry, turned pleading, then circled back to angry again. Classic stages of getting caught with your hand in the cookie jar. The final touch? I'd arranged for all their weekend footage, carefully edited, of course, to be sent to every mutual friend and family member. Nothing explicit, just enough to show exactly what kind of honest relationship they'd been pursuing. A week later, I was sitting in Mike's office, finalizing the divorce details. Rachel hadn't contested anything. Smart move on her part. She'd moved in with her sister. Marcus's wife had taken him for everything he was worth, which wasn't much, and their little CrossFit romance had crashed and burned like a New Year's resolution in February. "You know," Mike said, shuffling the papers, "in all my years of divorce law, I've never seen someone handle infidelity quite like this." I shrugged. She wanted honesty. I just made sure everyone got the full story. That night, I sat in my quiet house, nursing a beer and feeling peaceful. The anger was gone, replaced by something like satisfaction. Rachel had wanted to explore new relationship dynamics. Well, she got her wish. Now she could explore being single. As for me, I was done with the whole mess. The house was mine, my business was thriving, and I had a date next weekend with a yoga instructor who'd heard about Rachel's honest approach and thought I deserved better. Sometimes the best revenge isn't serving it cold, it's serving it with style, documentation, and a side of karma.